Thank you so much, David, for inviting me here today for this series of fascinating talks. I've really learned so much, and speaking as someone who I have absolutely very little knowledge about ESG. I'm really, really interested to learn about these different aspects, especially the methodological aspects of ESG. So what I've taken away from the series of talks that I've heard today is that measurement is really, really crucial and very important. And that's something that resonates very strongly with my role as director of HKU Methods Hub. Just following on from Anthony Jung's talk about how measurement really transformed those very vague concepts of CSR into financial instruments that could be that could be marketed better. I think that's a really important key point, that measurement has this very strong role in transforming nebulous concepts into concrete actions. And Professor Harter's talk, which I really, really enjoyed listening very much. Again, measurement plays such a key role. I mean, the wonderful examples that she gave around, how there's this very strong disconnect between universal attributes and local values, and the wonderful examples of with the Human Development Index, for example, that really resonated with me, and it reminded me that very often in research, especially, we measure things that are easy to measure, but not necessarily the objects that we want to transform, and that got me thinking about causal frameworks, because very often we're interested in measuring things that are capable of transforming things. So I was reminded greatly by, again, this is not my particular field of expertise, but in evaluation research, there are other sort of frameworks of measurements, such as community-based system dynamics. So that takes a slightly different approach to measuring complex values. So that, but it does follow a similar group model building process. So it's community-based, and it goes through iterations of getting participants in communities to spell out what is really valuable to them, what they think is really key in transforming the system. So here the emphasis is very much on a causal framework, and people can draw arrows and feedback loops so that they can really identify the measurable things that can cause a system change. So here it's perhaps less of an emphasis on what is valued in the community, but more of an emphasis on what can be done to change the system, whether it's sustainable development or poverty alleviation. And there the assumption that's often made is that people wonder, how is it that people who may not be very well educated, how can they be engaging in causal thinking? So there's often a reluctance to engage with this method, because they think you have to be very well educated to be engaged in systems thinking, to be engaged in causal frameworks. But really, it's people who use these community-based system dynamics thinking, they show that often it is the people, the elites, who have a very particular way of framing these system dynamics that are not necessarily helpful, that will not necessarily lead to change, but the people who are disempowered or disenfranchised, especially those who with lower levels of education, that are capable of thinking in terms of system change dynamics. And here, just linking back to the earlier talks, I think what what is really key here is getting people to think in terms of trade-offs. So Professor Harder was talking about the indicators. Some indicators are very key, but some indicators there can be some trade-offs in. And similarly, in any sort of causal modeling approach, we're interested in what are the indicators that that can be traded off. There are negative and positive impacts, and that is something I think that I haven't heard very much of so far. Again, this is not my field, but in the ESG data frameworks, they're very high-level data frameworks. So what would be interesting is to hear more about what are the explicit trade-offs that are being made at those conceptual levels, because clearly, financial instruments are being driven by a whole range of different incentives, motivations, and there are trade-offs that are being implemented there, but we're not very clear about what those trade-offs are. So I think measuring all of these concepts is really key. And it's really wonderful to see how the methodology is being developed, or has been developing and applied, because it really makes the data that's collected either at the local levels or at the institutional or across international levels, how that data is so it's transparent and well-defined. I think the transparency of the data is also really key to developments in this arena. So thank you very much for your wonderful presentations.